You've got questions, we've got answers. Welcome to the Therapist Question Box, where trauma-trained therapists tackle real questions from real people. I'm your host, Lindsay, bringing you grounded insights you can actually use, brought to you by Therapy Utah. Welcome back to the Therapist Question Box. We are here to answer your tough mental health questions and even your easy mental health questions. And if you're worried about asking for yourself, just ask for a friend. We want to help you on your journey of life. Today we have an interesting episode that did so well that we wanted to bring it back. So back by popular demand is this week's episode. We hope you'll enjoy. So today we're talking about a friend who gives unwanted advice. And research continues to show that strong social relationships are critical for health, happiness, and so many aspects of our well-being. But no friend and no friendship, as we all know, is perfect. Friendships have to be nurtured and maintained. It can be tempting to abandon a friendship when it runs into trouble. But a good friendship is so rare and valuable that it's worth trying to save if at all possible. Today, we're going to tackle one of the major threats in friendship, a friend that loves to give unwanted advice. My guest is therapist Kathy Kinghorn, who not only knows a lot about friendships, but is also a personal dear friend. So Kathy, let's just launch right in. First of all, I should welcome you. Welcome, Kathy, to the podcast. Thanks for being here. I'm going to launch right into the question, and I think that will lead the discussion. So here's the question from our listener. I have a great friend, a woman I've known for over 2 decades. She is a great person, always willing to be there for me, aware of what's going on in my life, supportive, etc. She is very outspoken and direct. She is a very outspoken and direct person, which I love about her, mostly. The problem is that she loves to give advice, outspoken, direct, highly opinionated advice on almost every topic. And it seems like it's just getting worse. If I counter the advice trying to say it might not work for me, for example, we get into stupid arguments. So I usually just let it go, keep my mouth closed, and ignore what she says. But I find myself getting more and more annoyed and angry. As soon as she starts in with her advice, I find myself not enjoying our time together anymore. Is there anything I can do to save both the friendship and my sanity? I think people can relate to this, right? That friend that it sounds like is a dear friend to this woman, but she's feeling some frustration. So what are your thoughts?
I was just looking at some interesting research, Lindsay. It said that we only accurately understand 20% of what's going on with another person that we're talking to. It only goes up to 35% if they're a really good friend. So there's a 65 to 80% gap where we're not accurate in what we're understanding about the other person. I'll give you an example from my own life. I was sharing with somebody that usually when I was with this group of people, I just felt like something was off. I couldn't quite figure it out, but something was off. And my friend said, well, you're intimidating. And I could not have been more shocked. If she would have said, I love that you're so fluent in Russian, I would have, it was an equal shock level. I was like, what are we talking about? Stunned, absolutely stunned. And what I realized is I'm an introvert in social settings. And so I don't usually lead with the conversation. I usually enjoy other people carrying the conversation. I'm interested in the dialogue. I've always been an observer of people. However, not really engaging verbally showed up as I might be judging, I might be intimidating. And so I realized that I needed to start talking sooner in a conversation. And it did change the dynamic. And I actually asked a few of them, I said, hey, crazy thing that came up. And what? They were like, well, yeah, we've always kind of wondered what's going on in your mind. And I was like, Wow. And I used the word intimidating, which was really painful for me to say because I feel like I'd make every effort to
Mm.
have inclusion, you know. But what a turning point for me to understand that people saw me in a light that I had no idea about.
Yes.
So
And
with
that,
this question, it brought that to mind that what's going on for the one offering all the advice.
yes. So interestingly, when you said that, like so many times we don't see ourselves the way others see us.
Mhm.
Right. So this woman that's giving all the advice, and I mean, I'm sure she's not doing it to be annoying or, I'm sure she's trying to be really helpful. I'm sure her motives are really good and she probably thinks she has really good advice and she may. Right. So it's really taking a step back and saying, okay, wait, how might this be perceived to somebody else? I've heard maybe a good question is, are you open to feedback? Do you want advice or do you want me to just listen? I would say for me personally as a therapist, it's really tricky because that's our job is we're assessing, we're trying, sometimes diagnosing, we're trying to figure out what's really going on. We're getting information, we're kind of doing some detective work, it feels like. And so when I'm with family or friends, I really feel like I have to conscientiously take my therapist hat off and put on my mom hat or my friend hat or my wife hat, because that's who I am to those people. I'm not their therapist. So can you see? I don't know if you ever struggle with that too, but boy, it can be a challenge.
Yeah, for me, that has not been a struggle. In fact, maybe I go to the other extreme. One day I was talking to my boy who was struggling with some stuff in his relationship, and I was listening and hearing what he had to say. And he said, Mom, do I have to pay you to get advice? You're not telling me anything. And in
Mm.
my head, he just needed somebody to listen. And it didn't even occur to me that he wanted advice. I was just watching him process through it, you know? So yeah,
So
it's
maybe a
interesting.
little less of me and little more of you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
We might get a
yep,
good balance. It's true, right?
yeah.
So he's saying, I want more of that advice. That would be helpful for him. Yeah. So, how do you go ahead?
Well, I was just saying with this particular situation, I would really look at, has this changed over the 20 years? Has her level of advice giving kind of increased? And what's the story under the story? That she may feel like that this friendship, maybe she's giving a lot of advice and it's shutting down a lot of interactions for her. So her anxiety is kind of up in center and she's nervous that you're going to leave her too, right? And so
Mhm.
instead of backing off from the advice, she feels like my only value
Mm.
is as if I'm here to give her information. And so you might back up just a little bit and she takes that as, oh my gosh, this is going to end badly. I'm going to lose a friend of 20 years. So I just need to keep giving advice to actually keep the friendship so I'm adding value. In
Mm.
reality, it's the exact opposite. And so it's like, a better way to examine it is, why is the conversation more so about your life?
Mm.
What might be going on in hers that's so painful, like maybe the loss of this friendship, or maybe other things that she just doesn't know if she can share because, she doesn't know if you'll be able to hold that much pain. What's going on for her that the focus is on your life?
Boy, that just turned it on its head. Let's really think about what's going on, that the conversation is always focused on you. I mean, I think that's a really insightful point that this person may be completely unaware of, right? So if she feels, and yet if she feels this way, it's still valid to her, right? She's
Oh,
frustrated. How does she navigate this? Like, how do you say, okay, I want this friendship and I want to respect this friendship. I don't want to lose it, but I also feel like this advice that I'm getting is just too much. I don't like it. I don't want it. I just want her to be my friend. I mean, is that what you could say to? I mean, what would you say to her?
I think it's a great starter, Lindsay, to re-examine what that space between you and your friend looks like, right? Because it sounds like it's gotten to the point where it's just bad conversations. We're just making statements to each other. That's
Mm,
all. And now, instead of giving her my full attention, I think attention should be like an on-off switch. I'm either attending and paying attention or I'm not. But in this situation, it sounds more like it's become a dimmer switch. I start off and I'm excited. I'm going to tell her about this crazy thing that happened. And all of a sudden she's saying, well, so now my attention, that dimmer switch is going down. She panics because she feels me disconnect. So she amps up on what she believes holds the value. And so I think to kind of change that space between the two, it's like ask better questions,
Ask some better questions.
Yeah. Like just for example, what do you think I value the most from you? What you believe that I've gained the most? Why do I value this friendship? And she might say, well, I know you resist a lot, but I do think that my advice has really helped. Remember that time? And she might share that. What a beautiful opportunity for you to remind her and let her know of what you really value about the relationship.
I love that. This is a beautiful opportunity and a time to let her know what you really value, right? That this is a time where you can ask better questions. And again, here's what I'm hearing, that let's just try to find the best way to navigate and say the right thing so it doesn't hurt our feelings, but we're honoring ourselves. It's really saying let's wait, let's turn this around. Maybe you could ask better questions. Maybe you could see why the conversation is always about you. What's going on there? I mean, that's such a flip of thinking. And what you said about the on-off switch, boy, I feel like we live in a dim world instead of an on-off world, right? We've got our phones in front of us, so we're listening and we're paying attention, but kind of not really because we're on our phones and we're doing 7 other things. So that principle of really being present. I mean, I think when I think of somebody, when they just are with me and I feel seen and heard and that I'm a priority for them, it changes how I feel that interaction is. And so that principle of on-off switch and that we shouldn't have that ding switch, because then what happens? We start to say, wait, I'm not being seen and heard. Hold on. I'm going to do something to be seen and heard. So I'm going to really amp up whatever I'm doing. I mean, I think that same principle could apply with kids. It could apply with so many things where, oh, wait, there's a dimming switch happening. So I'm going to amp up my bad behavior, whatever it is, advice, whatever it is, that we're really considerate of the time and the attention that we're giving to individuals, and in this case, this friendship, how we're really attuning and attending when we're with that person.
Yeah, absolutely, Lindsay. You know me, I'm going to drop some more research.
I'm ready.
36% of people in the American population say that they don't have anyone that knows them well. 36%. So the more this relationship moves apart, the less that other person trusts that you know them well. And so, one of the quick answers from a therapist would be, you need to hold boundaries with her, right? I mean, she's monopolizing whatever but I feel like boundaries, that word can have a negative connotation. So here's what I would say, not just with this situation, but with our relationships, build a bridge. Because building a bridge, think about, why do we build a bridge? Well, there's something that we need to get away from. Maybe it's a fast-moving river. Maybe it's a chasm. There's something that isn't safe for us to be. So we need to build a bridge over to it. And the first part of building the bridge, examine the site. You've got to make sure that bridge is absolutely on solid ground. And just visually, if I'm going to build a bridge towards a person, for me, that's so much more gentle on my soul to hear than I've got to hold a boundary. As you start building that bridge, bridges are boundaried. They absolutely have boundaries. And we know what they're moving us away from. So for example, for this person, maybe what this bridge moves her away from is saying to the other friends, I'm going nuts with her. all she does is give advice. And, just her name no longer is safe in your mouth. And you don't want that. So you want that bridge to take you away from whatever is unsafe for you and for her. And with the bridge, you get to choose, are you going to walk over that bridge? Are you going to meet them halfway? Where are you going to be in this? And right now, just the structure of the question, there seems to be, one person that's kind of the victim of this behavior. And there's one person that's victimizing. She just won't shut up about advice, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we can build a bridge and really see her and build that in a way that allows us to choose, when do I walk over it? When do I say, you know what? I'm going to need you to meet me in the middle, and let's talk in the middle, and let's change that dynamic so that we're both coming somewhere in the middle. I think when you have that kind of visual framework, you can stay with this friend who they do need relationship, right? Now, we can't always stay in an unhealthy relationship. If a relationship gets to a point where there's extreme toxicity, if we're not safe, then that bridge really has to be one way. I'm going to move away from it, but move away from going over it.
Mm-hmm. So, I love the bridge analogy, because as you're talking, it makes me think we're moving away from something, but we're also moving towards something else, right? Mm-hmm. So we're not just getting away from something. We're really saying, I'm in moving away from that, I'm moving towards something else. So if it is a toxic friendship, what am I moving towards? I'm moving towards relationships that feel fulfilling on both sides. I'm moving towards honoring myself and making sure that that is happening as well. So that analogy is beautiful, because it's away from something else and towards something that feels more congruent with what feels right to me.
Yeah, and the unhealthy stuff is what we built the bridge for, to move away from. We never have to touch that racing river because we've got a bridge to go over it. Yep. So this definitely, I do believe that the person asking the question truly is seeing the unhealthiness that's developed. They really are. And what they're asking for is, how do I get to the healthy parts that I loved about this relationship? Yes.
And sometimes I believe when we are not boundaried, we just stay in resentment, and we just, you can hear it here. It's like, I love her, but she's so opinionated and strong. And, it was highly opinionated and outspoken, direct. I mean, you can hear in that question, there's some resentment coming up for her. I heard Brene Brown say something a while ago, and I loved it. She said that, when we're more boundaried, she said, I used to be far more sweet, but I was less loving. And she said, now, because I'm boundaried, I might come across as less sweet, but I'm far more loving. And I love that idea that, you know what, it may feel difficult to say, this is the bridge and this is the parameters of that bridge. But, in my heart, and the way I engage with you, and in my mind, the way I think about us in this relationship, it's honest, it's authentic, it's not full of resentment. So that idea that I may be less sweet, but I'm far more loving, I think really applies here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, good bridges have firm foundations to them. They withstand the test of time. Mm-hmm. And I was looking up bridge building because of this analogy that came to mind. And somebody wrote up the 10 commandments of bridge building. Number 3 was, don't believe anything you see. And I thought, isn't that true? What this person is seeing right now is somebody that is so self-absorbed and so opinionated and all those things. What if you didn't believe any of that? And you looked for what's underneath all of that? And you found who she truly is and why there's been this shift. To me, she sounds like a woman in pain.
And that requires staying in a place of curiosity, both about your own experience and her experience, instead of jumping to the conclusions or judgment. And that's sometimes a bit of a vulnerable place to be. right?
Oh,
When we kind of want to point the finger but to say, wait a minute, this might be somebody that's in pain. Maybe something else is going on here for her.
yeah. I mean, you could start with just shaking up the conversation, like, what talent do you have that you're not using right now? And that brings a conversation to her. And I would be curious what talent she's not using. But I would bet with all of this advice giving and all the focus on somebody else, there's a talent that she has and she's not using it. Wouldn't that be such a robust, fun conversation if the other person could really go, I guess I've always wanted to, be a foster mom and serve that population. And I've always been scared that I wouldn't be up to the task. And so that fear of stepping into who she is comes out as control and trying to step into somebody else's life. And it's just, ask better questions.
Ask better questions and lead with curiosity is what I'm hearing. And really that boundaries are not, they're not unkind. They're not fake walls. They are not separation. They're loving. They're respectful, and they're needed in this type of relationship. And again, staying in that place of curiosity, I think, will change everything. When you start to turn it, look a little bit in the mirror at yourself and then say, what's going on with her? Maybe there's something, when you said a talent that she could be engaged in that maybe she's not pursuing, something's going on for her that we maybe really could get curious about. Well, I really appreciate this conversation, and I hope it was helpful to our listener. It is something that I think we will all deal with to some degree or another. And hopefully it's something that we can stay in a place of curiosity, stay out of judgment, and really move forward with that connection, because we want that number to go up. We want that number of people that feel like they have close friends to increase, because we all need to be seen and heard. If you like this episode, please share it with your friends, rate and review, and we will see you next time. That's a wrap for today on the Therapist Question Box. I'm Lindsay Schiss. Thanks for listening. And remember, every question you ask is an opportunity to learn and grow. Brought to you by Therapy Utah.
Hey, this is Kathy Kinghorn. I'm an owner at Therapy Utah. If you'd like to book with one of our trauma-trained therapists, go to www.therapyutah.org. Thanks for listening.